When I was 11 I heard my friend's brother being molested, and I did nothing about it. It was grade 6. I had just met new friends at my new middle school, and one of them invited me over for a sleepover along with 5 other girls in our class. When we got there everything was fine. We had cake, ate pizza, played the Wii, and were having teenage girl talk. My friend also had a younger brother who lived with her and her parents, who was around 8 years old. Later that night I was the last one of us girls to fall asleep. We slept out on the living room floor, in sleeping bags, and her younger brother's room was on the other side of the wall where I was laying. All of a sudden I hear his bedroom door open quietly, then shut, followed by the boy's muffled cries, sobs, and the sound of a belt being undone. Then I heard "Stop daddy, you're hurting me," followed by more sobbing. I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't know at the time what exactly had happened, but years later I found out that the brother who I met years ago had run away several times at the age of 15 and said his father abused him for years. He's a very troubled young adult now, and I feel constant guilt. I'm 24 years old now, over a decade has passed, and I still wish I would have done something. Anything. Even though I was just a kid as well. Lied about my identity my entire life. I do not know how to keep going. I've been lying about my age my whole life. It all started when I was 14 and was dating a 18-year-old at the time, and lied to him and said I was 17. Years later from then on, I built a pretty substantial social media following with an audience that believes I'm an adult. Therefore I carried on with my lie, and so when I was 16, I told everybody that I was 19, and now everybody thinks I'm 20. This almost feels like an identity crisis, as the only person that knows the truth is my best friend. In other words, I've been living in a lie for the last 3 years, pretending to be way older than I really am. I couldn't really just come clean, because now I have an audience to attend to, and I have to be in this character all the time. I'm afraid to lose my platform, my friends, and all the relationships that I have built over the years. I went to college when I was 16, which just reinforced my incentive to lie about my age even more, in order to fit in. The reason I carried on my lies for this long is because I'm not at the maturity of a normal teenager. I moved out of my own home when I was 15 and have been financially independent since. I have my own career, a platform, and stability at a young age independently, but the only thing I don't have is a sense of identity. I don't lack life experience. If anything, I have had more life experience than someone 3 years older than me, so that is how I have gotten away with this for so long. I went to lengths of getting fake IDs to try to cover up my tracks, and sometimes I believe my own lies. After all these years of lying, I'm almost unable to see what's wrong with it now, because I've gotten so comfortable in the identity I created for myself, a 20-year-old college girl, when really, I'm only 17. I do not know how to come to terms with reality, and in other words really been keeping up a fake persona all these years. I feel like a sociopath, or even a psychopath, for being able to keep this lie in check for so many years. Please, someone give me some advice. Thank you. My teacher sucked me off after class and got in trouble for letting the next class in 20 minutes late. I'm 15 and I have this hot teacher named Mrs. Baker. She has a big pair of tits and a tight little ass, and I've always had a crush on her, and lucky for me the teacher preferred us to text her if we had questions instead of email her, so she gave the whole class her number. This was not her personal number, it was her work number, but her number nonetheless. So one night I was really horny and about to jerk off while I thought about Mrs. Baker when I got the thought to text her and maybe get some pictures from her. I think my being horny made me not think straight, because I look at that now and think I would never do it and it would be risky, but I texted her and told her I was confused on something, and she asked what I was confused on, and I said I'm confused on why my cock had not been in her mouth, and it's already September in the school year. I'm so lucky Mrs. Baker wanted me, because if she didn't I would be in so much trouble. She texted back that maybe the next school day she could help me be less confused. I was so hard and asked for pics I could jerk off to, and she sent hella pictures I got off to them, and went to sleep, so I could have fun with her the next day. When I had her class I walked in, and sat at my seat trough the whole class me and her were checking each other out, and when class was over she asked me if I could stay, so she could talk with me about an assignment. I stayed, and she shut her door, and locked it. We made out for a little bit and then I told her I want her wet mouth on my cock. She pulled my pants down and sucked on the tip a little bit, then she put it fully in her warm wet mouth. I almost lost my nut right there. Her tongue felt so good on my dick I nutted in her mouth, and by then I was so hard she cleaned up and went to go let the next class in, but I stopped her and pulled off her pants and underwear and fucked her against the wall for 10 minutes. I pulled out before I could nut in her pussy, and I was so satisfied. We made out for a little after that, and finally we were done. I asked if I could come over to her house that night and we could have fun, and she said yes. So that night I went to her house and we had sex all night. I told my mom I was going to sleep over at a friend's house, but I slept with Mrs. Baker all night. We agreed to be fuck buddies, and I told my mom that I would be doing my homework at a friend's house every day after school, but I would go over to Mrs. Baker's house and have sex with her, and she would give me straight A's. This still goes on to this day. We don't want to get caught because that means this would have to end, so we don't fool around at school anymore, and we are really good about not getting caught. And yes, Mrs. Baker is married, but her husband is a traveling salesman and he is never around, and once a month I will tell my mom I'm having a sleepover at my friend's house, so once a month I get to spend a very fun night with Mrs. Baker. She is 25 and I'm 15. We are 10 years apart, and when I turn 18 she said she would leave her husband and marry me, and until I'm 18 we plan to fuck every day. We have not gotten any STDs and this has been going on for 2 years now, so we don't think we ever will. The only person we sleep with are each other, and I feel so lucky that whenever I'm horny I have a hot teacher I can mess around with to please me. I can't wait to marry her and fuck every night and sleep together every night. Her body is amazing and I love her so much. My cock feels like it was made to be in her mouth and I love what her tongue does. I'm very happy, but I feel like what we are doing to her husband is wrong. But every time I feel guilty I just get sucked off by Mrs. Baker and I feel fine again. I blackmailed my uncle some time ago and I'm still trying to fix everything. Hey, hi. Months ago I made a confession post and I think now is a good time to tell what happened since then, since it was a lot. In my first post I told what happened when I was a preteen and blackmailed my uncle with threats of sexual harassment if he didn't give me the attention I wanted. At the time I felt good doing this, but when I got older I felt worse and worse until I realized that I fucked up and lost my favorite uncle forever. A lot of people curse me, others said I deserved to be really raped, but others were nice and gave me advice on trying to fix things. A few weeks after I made the first post I wrote an email to my uncle apologizing myself, but he never answered me. A few more weeks after that he came for my grandfather's birthday and I saw him, but he completely ignored that I existed, and I didn't have the courage to talk to him either. I also know that he always brings something to my cousins when he comes to town and visits my aunt's house, but this time he didn't bring anything to anyone. I wondered if it was because I would be there and he didn't want to give me anything, or he didn't want to get the rest of the family confused not giving a gift just to me. I was very angry and frustrated because of that. I felt that I was worthless, even though I just apologized to him, and that he was punishing me for the rest of my life for something stupid I did when I was little. I stayed like that for the next few days and my older cousin, 22 I'll call she Julia, noticed, and then I decided to tell her. She was really furious with me and said that this was the stupidest thing I could do in life, that I could have destroyed our family and you know the rest, but she is really soft and upbeat and agreed to help me as long as I asked my mom to go to therapy to understand my problem with men. Well, I did that and started doing the sessions. Some virtual, others face-to-face pandemic stuff. I didn't tell exactly what I did to my therapist, but TLDR from like 6 months of sessions, I have some behavior disorders resulting from father absence. Doing what I promised to Julia, she spoke to our uncle someday by the middle of November and told him that I told her about everything I did and that everything was a lie and that I feel horrible about it. She didn't want to tell me how he reacted or what he said, but she said that he said that at least I have done something to get a diagnosis is something, and if Julia think I'm okay I can go with her to meet him at the mall somewhere else in week he's going to be in town for Christmas. I don't know. I feel like a drug addict in rehab and sometimes I get frustrated with it. Sometimes I feel like I did the worst thing in the world. Sometimes I think he's overreacting, but at least he'll give me a chance to talk to him with my cousin. I don't know if he really apologizes or he just wants to stop having this problem when he come to visit our family, but I wanted him to like me again and that I stop feeling like a slut. TLTR, I blackmailed my uncle with threats of sexual harassment and I passed all 2020 trying to fix that. I got away after burning down my dad's rental house. My dad had a old trailer that he had on our property. After buying a newer one he would rent that one out. One day 2 weeks before Christmas I went into the trailer and burned it down. The fire department came and put out the fire. The insurance company sent out a inspector and him, and the fire marshal determined the fire started at a receptacle outlet. Noon lived in the house at the time, and it was in a state to where he fixed it up and re-rented it out.